Hi everyone, and welcome to the Bear Necessities. I'm Bear, and today we are making a lemon meringue tart. We can call it a pie. I'm making it in a tart pan because I just want more. Let's get started. First, I have this lovely dough disc that I made. This is pâte sucrée, and I will walk you through how to make that right now. So you're going to take a half a cup, 1 stick of very cold or frozen butter. I've gone ahead and grated mine, even though I'm putting it into a food processor, just to help it break down a little bit faster. If you're doing this in a bowl, the grating will actually help it move a little bit faster too if you're breaking it down with a fork. Now I've added half a teaspoon of salt, 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and I'm going to just blitz those together really quick just to kind of get them broken up into small pieces, roughly the size of small peas. You don't want it broken down too much just yet. Now I'm adding 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and again I'm just going to blitz that together until it's almost a sandy texture at this point. Rough sand is what you're looking for. If you're doing this with a fork, just keep going until you have small, teeny tiny sandy pieces. You can test and see if it holds together when you squeeze it. Here, I'm going to show you. So when you take some of that fine sandy texture and you just press it together, it should actually hold ever so slightly together, but then still just a little bit fall apart. And now we're adding 1 egg yolk. There was a little bit of egg white on that, but that's all right. And finally, we're going to blitz that all together and keep it going until it makes a paste, like a pastry. The reason I'm using my food processor and not my hands is I don't want it to overheat too much with my hands. Even though I have cold hands, they do warm up fairly quickly. My food processor, the motor on it doesn't get too hot too quickly, so this is easier for me. And you just want to be able to gather it up and it'll hold itself together. And now I'm taking a piece of plastic wrap, just putting it out on my counter for now. And I'm going to turn the newly made pastry out onto that plastic wrap. It's going to be a little bit crumbly, that's all right. We're going to press it together. It doesn't have to be amazingly perfect just yet. And I'm just going to kind of press and fold it together, not too much, but enough that it stays combined. This is a fairly dry dough, but don't worry, that will change as it sits. All right, now I'm just going to wrap it up with a plastic wrap. And once there, I'm going to put this in the refrigerator between 1 hour and 24 hours. Overnight is best, but 1 hour is fine. So what I ended up doing is making a double batch. So after I walked you through that was a single batch recipe that I just walked you through. I ended up making a double batch just because I have this tart pan and it's a little bit larger than normal. The single batch will make a 9-inch pie pan size shell, or a 8-inch pie pan shell, so it's standard, or a 9 to 10-inch Tart ring, which is like that. A thin crust for it. Well, I made a double batch just in case, because we can always cut the excess off and then bake off the extra and have like really tasty little shortbread cookies or something, because it's basically a shortbread. So to get started working with it, I had put it in the fridge for a little over an hour just to really firm up and let the gluten in the dough itself relax, because it definitely needed to relax. Don't we all? Just gonna put my lid over there. Who else has their tub o' flour? I'm just going to put a little flour on my bench and on my hands and on my rolling pin. Okay, so I've got my floured bench and I've got my hockey puck of pâte sucrée, and I'm just kind of breaking it down just a little bit using the warmth of my hands. My hands are always very cold, to give it a little bit of encouragement, because while we want it nice and cool, we don't need it cold. It will just crack apart, and that is a problem. Not a huge one. This dough blends back together really well. We just don't want to overwork it and have it turn tough on us again. The reason that we cooled it was to give it enough time to really rest and let the gluten relax inside the dough. So all those strands could loosen back out and get back to tender, because they will have become quite stretchy and rubbery otherwise. And that's not pleasant. Not for a pastry case like this. And I'm rolling this out to fairly large, again, because my tart pan is not small. And we want it, if you are using if you're doing a pie crust instead of tart, what you want to do is, to make sure it's the right size, is go ahead and take your pie dish, turn it over onto the crust. You can hold it over it. There needs to be about a 1-inch gap all the way around of the dough being wider than the pie pan, and that should work in general. If you're doing deep dish, if you have a deep dish pie pan or something, you're going to want to go ahead and do about 1.5 inches to 2 inches around the outside, just to make sure you have enough dough spread and you don't have to fight it, because we don't want to stretch this into the dish too much, because that can make it actually shrink back up on us. We don't want that. So now what I did was I rolled the pastry up onto my rolling pin and then unrolled it over my dish, as you could tell. And now what I'm doing is lifting the sides, letting the excess drape into the dish so that I'm not stretching it in. I'm actually just letting it actually fall under its own weight and fill in all the spots. Let me just go all the way around. And if you want to make sure that it's going to fit perfectly well, you can actually take a little bit of the extra and use it to press your dough into the sides now that it's draped in. The dough is not really going to stick to itself, and it'll be gentle. So you can use it to actually make your dough fit into the pan well without smushing it, without causing many other issues. I had a crack over on this side, so fix that. It's one of the great things about this pastry dough is we're not looking for We're not looking for a flaky on this one. We are looking for crisp. And now that we have it, I'm going to grab my little paring knife and I'm just going to trim with my knife flat all the way around the tart dish. And a lot of people will say, do that after. This will help, this will let it shrink in a little bit. That's fine, because the amount of filling that we're making will not fill this entire crust to the top. So I'm going to let it shrink down and it'll make just the right amount. If you are making a pie and you make the amount of filling that I'm about to, because I'm making a double batch because bigger pan, then you are going to want to go ahead and leave a lip of the pastry over the sides of your pan. Go ahead and crimp, but leave a little bit, or decorate however, you don't have to crimp. Leave it a little bit there on the sides draping, because that'll bake on and kind of hold on, and it grips the sides so it doesn't shrink back. And then once it's done baking, you just trim that off, and then you have a snack because it's tasty. And thank you, oven. We're using Big Oven today, and Big Oven just told me it's ready to go. And I still have pastry dough. It's about a half a batch. I'm sure I'll find something to do with it. All right, and then let me get my flour out of the way because we don't need it anymore. I'm going to grab a fork, and what we're going to do is actually pierce the pastry crust all the way around. You don't have to do it a huge amount. I like to do a couple of rings just to make sure. And what we're doing is this will kind of melt in on itself, and we're keeping it from forming any bubbles in case there was anything trapped underneath the pastry, or there's any places where it's a little bit thicker or more wet. It won't just bubble up and get huge on us, and it'll release some of the moisture. And with that, I'm also going to give it a really light way down. It doesn't have to be too much, but I'm going to put a little bit of foil just into the bottom. To give it a fighting chance. These are just pinto beans that I use for this purpose. It's about a pound. You don't need too many. You can get the pie weights. They're great. Oh my gosh, just, don't touch them after you use them. But whatever you got, if you got beans, if you've got rice, whatever you're able to use to weigh this down. And don't press, just kind of evenly spread them. And we will do that and keep a little baggy because the beans go right back in once they're cool. And I'm going to bake this with the beans in it for about 15 minutes until it's just set. And then at the 15-minute mark, I'm going to remove the beans and continue baking it for another 20 minutes or so. So this does bake between 30 and 35 minutes total. And I never told you, your oven is at 350 degrees. That would be great. I'm sure the graphic made sure you knew at the very beginning because I forgot. What a surprise. So let's get this baking and I'll see y'all back in just a minute. Alrighty, y'all, while the pastry case is baking, let's go ahead and get our filling started. I'm making a double batch like I mentioned earlier, so the amounts that I'm going to read off to you are the amounts for a single batch. And for that, you're going to need half a cup of lemon juice and the zest of those lemons. That's about 3-ish large lemons, or I don't know how many small, medium ones, sorry. I used Meyer lemons. They're fairly substantial. And so I got 3 of them into a half a cup of juice. And then I also zested them and put that in. So that's all in here together. You're also going to need 1 cup of sugar. Just regular granulated sugar is fine. You need 5 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is going to be a pie filling, and we're not going to be baking it off. So we're going to be adding the cornstarch in here and cooking it until it's thick enough to set up in the fridge. One of the reasons I'm making the double batch also is any that's left over we can keep. It'll set up, but it'll still spread nicely on toast because we like lemon curd in my house, and this is as close as we're going to get without me just making lemon curd, which is just less thick, that's all. You will also need half a teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons, 3 to 4 depending, of unsalted butter. You can use salted, just don't add the granulated salt in. Again, since I'm doing 2 batches, it's a whole stick versus a half that you would be using. And finally, 4 egg yolks. And also, sorry, one more, a cup and a half of water, just room temperature water. We're going to be using it to kind of fill it in. It helps with the concentration of everything. So let's get this started. I have a pan, not lined or anything because this has quite a bit of acid that we're cooking, so I don't want it to break it down. This is stainless steel, so we're just doing that. I'm just going to put it over medium to medium-low heat right now just to let it start going. And so in here, we are going to put the sugar, the cornstarch. All right, everybody out of the pool. There we go. Sugar, the cornstarch, and the salt. All together, and we're just going to whisk those together really quick. And it's mostly to make sure that the cornstarch is broken down enough, because sometimes, you know, it has the lumps and things. I'm just turning my heat off for 1 second. I'm getting a little bit of cornstarch poofs. All right, so I've got these 3 mixed together. So again, that's the salt, cornstarch, and sugar. And into that, we are going to go ahead and add our lemon juice. And our water. And you want to take your whisk and make sure everything breaks down pretty well in there. You don't want any lumps of, especially the cornstarch. So give it a nice whisk. But now that it's in, we can switch to a rubber spatula because we are going to want to go ahead and scrape the bottom as we cook to keep it from building up anything because of the cornstarch. So just gently stirring. You can continue whisking, but if you just want to use a wooden spoon, a spatula, whatever, we're just going to bring this up to temperature. And what we're looking for is for this to bubble, start turning a little bit clear. It won't get like perfectly clear, that's just not gonna happen. But a little bit clear, bubbling, and very thick, like extremely thick. I will show you what I mean in about 3 seconds. See you then. Alrighty, so that took about 10 minutes to really get thick. It is incredibly transparent, but of course you can see it's not actually clear. And when I drag my finger across, which, remember, don't do that unless you have asbestos hands. It holds the streak that I wiped off. And that's what we want. So let that stand for just a second. Wiping the stickiness off my hand. All right. And time for just a tiny bit of bravery. What we're going to do, grab your whisk, start whisking your egg yolks. And we're going to pour in about 1/3 to 1/2 of the lemon gel, more or less what it is, into the egg yolks while stirring like mad. Because what we're doing is we are tempering those egg yolks so that when we mix them back in, they don't turn to scrambled eggs. Because they give us the final color and the final thickness. So we want to bring them up to the temperature that we are working at without risk of it going chunky on us, because that's not tasty. And once you have that going, you just pour them into the rest of it. Get all that tasty goodness out of there. And if you are worried that you've cooked your eggs, you can strain it. So when you get ready to pour it into the pie crust, you'll just run it through a sieve, and that will get all of your zest out, but it'll also, in case there are any tiny little bits or not so tiny bits of cooked egg yolk, it will catch those for you. Even I've done this quite a few times in my life, and it still happens to me every now and then, so don't feel bad if it does. It happens. Now, we have this all mixed well. We're going to bring this back up to a simmer. So back to the light bubble, not a boil, that we had going. All the time stirring it. You don't have to stir it like crazy. You just need to make sure nothing sticks to the bottom, because that will cook and not be pleasant. We want this pleasant. We want a pleasant pie, don't we? So I'm just going to keep using my rubber scraper, wooden spoon, again, whatever you got, your whisk, and just running around the sides and across the bottom to keep everything not sticking. And I'm going to keep doing that until I get back to a bubble, because that'll help it thicken significantly. Alright, I'm starting to get little bubbles now. It's been about 4 minutes. And this is starting to thicken pretty well. So we're setting the gelatin. And now that we have it there, I'm going to start adding the little chunks of butter and getting them stirred in. And I am going to go ahead and turn the heat off from this while I do this. And you're just going to add a little bit in at a time and keep stirring until it is completely mixed in. And then just add the next bit. All right, and this is your lemon curd, and again, it should hold a streak on your spoon. Now, since I used minor lemons, mine's not terribly tart. Using regular lemons, you'll get the more tart. So I just wanted to warn you, like if you use Myers It's going to be sweet, but that's the nature of the lemon. All right, just got our crust out. And I'm going to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. It can still be somewhat hot when we pour this in, but we don't need it screaming straight out of the oven hot. And once I have that poured in, I'm going to put this, I'm going to put some plastic wrap over the top, and I'm going to press the plastic wrap down onto the top. And from there, I'll walk you through. All right, see y'all soon. Okie dokie, so I have the meringue in the shell, and I'm kind of, or not the meringue, the lemon curd in the shell. I'm kind of glad I didn't show it because it splashed a little and got a little messy, and that was not cute. But there is about a cup and a half left over for me and my boys to enjoy. But I do have it into the shell up to the top of the pastry. Like I said, my pastry was going to shrink, but I knew the amount of lemon filling I was making. I didn't want to make that much because the meringue then needs to go on the top and kind of seal as well. So I've got a piece of plastic wrap, and you can use wax paper, whatever, as long as you can get it to sit directly on the top of the actual curd to prevent it from forming a skin while it cools, because we're needing it to cool just a bit just to set up. So let me pop this into the fridge and we will be getting to the meringue. Okay, so we have Miss Loretta over here, and I hope you'll notice I actually have a pot of water that has just come to the boil. I'm dropping it down to a simmer because this meringue gets cooked a little bit before we actually whip it, and that helps prevent what's called weeping, which is where a lot of water will actually seep out because air gets in and it kind of dries and things. We're just trying to prevent things from getting messy so that it stays a beautiful, pillowy, almost marshmallowy meringue on the top after we torch it and let it cool, because it's going to have to cool for quite a while before we can actually taste it. So to get started in this, remember those 4 egg whites that you kept? Here they are. This is actually my 8. I will be making extra meringue. Darn. And then in that, you're also going to need to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar, half a teaspoon of cream of tartar. That is somewhat optional. You can go without it. You're just going to need to whip them a little bit extra, and after you cook it, that way it really holds its shape. That's all. And then a decent pinch of salt. But of course, double batch for me, so everything's doubled up. Get that in there. Grab a whisk and just get things mixed together lightly. They don't have to be perfect. There we go. Let me push that out of the way and bring this into the way. And we're just going to whisk and stir this over the simmering water for 5 to 6 minutes, just to bring it up until you start seeing a little, like a little bit of steam. Mostly you just want to make sure that your sugar is completely dissolved and the egg whites are warm. You just don't want to risk cooking them, just like the egg yolks. And hint about the water is, though you want a pot of water underneath this, do not let the water touch the bowl. It'll get too hot and it will cook the eggs. You want it to have some room. I've got about 2.5 inches between the bottom of my bowl and the top of the water. You don't need much water. We're not doing this for super long. But I felt it was important to say that because an ounce of prevention keeps you from having to crack a whole bunch more eggs to make more meringue, because you just made really sweet egg white omelet. We're going to keep this going for just another minute. I'm starting to see teeny tiny granules of sugar. They're almost completely gone. There's only a few left. And my egg white is starting to fluff up because the egg white itself is starting to cook ever so slightly, not enough to scramble it, but enough to get it to really hold air. So this is why heating the eggs like this helps the meringue really set up. Okay, I can actually feel steam, just the tiniest bit coming off my eggs. So that's perfect. I'm going to turn off the heat. Grab Loretta and switch places with the cooktop. Now you can whisk this by hand as always. It'll be fine. It'll actually go a little faster because of the cooking. I'm going to whip this from medium up to high, just getting it started, until it forms glossy, hard peaks. Like it really holds on to those peaks. So I'll see y'all back in just a couple of minutes. It's going to take probably 4 to 5 to get there. So see you soon. Oh yeah, that is what we're looking for. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is super shiny and super yummy. I'm going to get this cleared off. Be right back with the pie. So we've got our pie here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the plastic wrap off. A little bit's going to stick to it. That's okay. It's not completely cold. It is cooler than it was. It's still hot. So we are just going to pile our meringue right on top. I, again, will not be using all of this because that's too much. And one of the things about meringue is you want it to go all the way to the side of the pie and cover the whole curd. You don't want any of it to be visible because that seals it in. So again, as it sets up, it helps prevent weeping. We don't want a sad pie. And I have a kitchen torch because I'm that guy. I've had it for years. If you have one, you'll be using that if you'd like. If you don't, and you have an oven convenient, then we are going to broil the top of this meringue. So go ahead and set your broiler to medium high if it goes by that range. Otherwise, you want it to be around 425 to 450 degrees. And once you have your meringue the way you want it, however you want it, like I said, if you're going to broil it, put it under your broiler 1 to 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. Keep an eye on it. Do not close that oven door. Watch it, because this will go from toasted to burned like that. There's a lot of sugar here, and egg whites are very, very sensitive. So once you get that nice golden, a little bit deep golden on the top, pull it out. Turn off your oven. Just pull the pie out, let it sit. But I have my kitchen torch here. So I'm just going to take it and go all the way around and get it nice and browned. And there we go. So I've got it nicely toasted up. I'm going to take this, pop it back in the fridge for 2 to 3 hours, get it nice and chilled all the way through. It doesn't have to be ice cold, but it does need to be chilled through. That way it's completely set up. And once it's set up, we'll be back and we get to taste it. See y'all soon. Okay, it has been several hours. It's actually been about 4.5 that this has been in the fridge. So it is cool, almost cold. Love it. It has set up nice, a little bit wobbly. The gelatin in it set up really well. The extra I checked, and it's holding its shape really nicely. I was able to go for a nice little jog and watch a storm come in and then take a shower. So different shirt, clean bear. So yay. Let's get this thing tasted though. So knife, meat, pie. Oh yeah. I get all my meringue. Which, by the way, the meringue is delicious. Very happy with it. The pie, the crust cracked when I was cutting it, but oh wow. Oh, that's good. A little tart, very sweet. It's creamy. The texture is really good. You got the little pieces of zest in there, but otherwise it melts on your tongue. The meringue is light and fluffy and sweet. The crust is just crisp and buttery, and I can't say more than that. This is a good little dessert. I'm happy with it. And I realized, I was talking to my husband earlier, and I was like, I've never actually made a lemon meringue pie. So here's a first for me, and I'm happy with it. So yay! And I hope you get a chance to try this one out. Or if you want, you can use orange juice, lime juice, whatever you want as far as citrus for this. Something light, because this surprisingly is very light. That's nice. But give it your own little twist. Maybe add some mint to it or something. But have some fun with it. Blood orange would be delightful, and the color would be amazing. So think about that one. And yeah, make it your own. And until I see y'all again, bye.